Smith, I'm the Kids Need Dads guy here, and I guess just quickly that we've been part of a team that have been trying to help dads for about 20 years around New Zealand. We know that under the human rights area, there's about 5 ways that dads are usually denied what we consider to be their human rights, to be informed, to be engaged, and to be included in maternity services, to be given things like parental leave, to be given things like support as a parent and support as a couple. In fact, in some ways, couples are denied their human rights in most maternity support services in New Zealand. Whenever there's postnatal depression, or it might be a serious case of PTSD or something after a baby, there's no guarantee that any of the dads get any help at all. Whenever there's a baby loss, there's no guarantee that dads will get any help at all. So don't even get us started about what happens when we hit SIFs or the family court. We know that there's a lot of other people out there doing that work. We know it's great to have people like Steve Evans doing the approaches and the awareness work and the networking. So we really appreciate everybody making the effort to come today. We know that this is the sort of time where we've got some sort of, I'm going to say, international credibility, and we're not alone. That's one of the main messages we know we all need to know, that we're not alone, we can all work together, we can get somewhere with these things. Dora, Steve.
Hi guys, thanks for that. The first thing I'd like to say is I agree, there is no doubt that men have been treated incredibly harshly to be part of their children's lives in New Zealand, but it's not just in New Zealand, it does go on around the Western world. And I can, through my own personal experience, can say that without the support groups of like what Brendan does, there's no balance. But when we look at the problems associated with the courts, the issue I see is it's not a gender issue. It is the abuse of the judicial system not interpreting the laws correctly. We're all supposed to be equal before the law. Well, that sure as shit ain't happening. But when I look at also the problems that I saw, all the cases are very different. There are the issues of the wives and the husbands that just don't get along and they just want to fight. And then there's many of us who just are abused by Oranga Tamariki. And the abuse that those lawless criminals have inflicted on our families is outrageous. And that is by the state. And my general experience of what I've found out throughout New Zealand is the state is by far the biggest abuser. And that's what you really need to wake up to, that the state is abusing us harder and more harshly than your ex-wife or your ex-husband. And the other problem, of course, is that an adversarial legal system is no place for families. As soon as you inflict a husband on a wife, the only person that's enjoying the trip is the lawyer, because he's billing the hours. And this is all about the money. Show me the money. So the reason we're here today is, and there's some of us here, there's Marika and George, there's Ali, there's, I'm not the only person from Families for Justice. There's a group of us that decided to start this. We had a little bit of a rocky road for a little bit there, because we were kind of hijacked by people that didn't agree that, we're a non-biased gender group, we're non-religious, and we're but before we say too much more, I think I would like to impress upon you the speech by Pink, and she's one of our side-discovered famous musicians, and it came from Melissa, and when I listened to it, it really did sort of say to me, this is what we should all be doing.
You feel like you don't matter, feel like your life doesn't matter, get involved. You can't tell me Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, Nelson Mandela, Gloria Steinem, Anita Hill, Ginsburg, Malala Yousafzai, Greta Thunberg. Tell me one person can't make a difference. I don't care about your politics. I care about your kids. I care about decency and humanity and kindness. Kindness today is an act of rebellion.
Yeah.
There are people that don't have what you have. Help them get it. There is a planet that needs help. It feels good to help. It feels powerful to help. Stop fighting each other and help each other. Get together with your friends and change the f***ing world. Thank you.
And I guess that kind of brings me on to the next point. You know, when we started our Families for Justice, I had this vision that I'd be able to use my business skills to sort of help us get to our goal. Wasn't sure what the goal was. Didn't work like that. Because we're dealing with voluntary people, we're dealing with people that are not paid to do any work, and you know, people like Mark, and the funding that we've had from various people like Dave and other people around the room like Mike, who have contributed so much to putting this show on the road. And it became very clear to me the only way we were going to get any movement with our government was we had to take them and deal with them internationally. Now, everybody here's got a story, otherwise you wouldn't be here. And one of the problems with New Zealanders is as long as it doesn't affect them, they don't care. And that's a big problem, because ladies and gentlemen, middle class New Zealand has to realise that these state agencies are going to be knocking on your door very shortly, because it's only going to grow. And we're going to hear the experience of Norway, and it's growing. And it's very clear to me that we can get a movement in New Zealand going, and that's fine, but this is an international problem. And very shortly Families for Justice is going to go international, and we're going to set up groups in other countries, so that when we do our international protests, which Marika and George were some of the original people, I still remember a picture down at the waterfront with all the signs and all the people, and Nellie and all those people who we started out with. And sadly, some of us have got a little bit of justice in the last 7 years. Many of us have got none. And I'm sick of it. And when it comes to politics, I really don't care, because it doesn't matter in New Zealand. We don't really have a democracy. We have parties that come and promise you for 3 months they're going to do this, that and everything. As soon as they're in, they lie and they backtrack. And then for the next 3 years, you're under a dictatorship. You know, National, I voted for them. I was a businessman. I thought they were going to protect me. Those were the buggers that used my kids in an international drug operation. Now, John Keyes, Paula Bennett, and Tolly Nash should be in jail for what they did. We haven't got there yet, but we're going to start working on it. And they said there was no housing crisis. Paula Bennett. And Paula Bennett changed the wind system to such as a state where human rights are being breached there all the time. We've got single mums in South Auckland with 2 kids starting the week $259 behind because of the cost of housing. We've got poverty in this country. We've got 330,000 children now living below the poverty line. What the fuck? We're supposed to be one of the top nations in the world to live in. It's bullshit. And then we've got Labour. The untouchable Miss Ardern. Now, I voted for Labour because I'd had enough of National. And then we've got them with the 40,000 people going out and signing the TPPA, and then they sign it because they were not going to sign it. So who can you trust? And sadly, I also threw my boat behind Winston and the New Zealand First people until, you know, Tracy Martin and Doric Noballs threw my kids under the bus, and for the greater good, they decided to get these drug dealers and put them in jail, and me and my children were collateral damage. So we all got a story, or we wouldn't be here. And you know, we got Mike Rowley from New Zealand Abuse. I mean, he deals with some pretty sticky stuff, and he's just got apologies from the corrections for arresting fathers and putting them in remand with no protection orders whatsoever. And then we've got some other heroes here, which we will address later on today. We've got Victor. Where is he? Very quiet man. Slugged it out for a long, long time. Very proud of you. Glad you're a New Zealander. And then we've got Steve, who went to Geneva with, where's my hero, Paul? You know, I used to work with him years ago. We only figured that out the other day. Really proud to know you people. And then we've got the scholarly musician, Mike Ferris. And Mike, I watched Mike and Marius have a chat for about 4 hours the other night. And after 2, I just about cooked. And these people were on the same page. And the other thing that I think should be known is that the last 3 people we were talking about were the people that filed in the United Nations for the Lake Alice abuse for electrification on their genitals and the torture, of which they've been very successful. And Marius, being an international human rights lawyer and abused by his own country, because you can't be an international human rights lawyer generally today unless you've lost your certificate and they put you in jail, said that he was really surprised that these 3 New Zealanders had been successful in the UN and not one of them was a lawyer. Yay! Because we are, you know, lawyers are only there to continue the conflict and extenuate it to make as much money out of you and the system as they can. Right, so I'd just like to thank you all for coming today. We've had a really amazing trip around New Zealand. I'd like to thank all the Hamilton girls for the last 2 days. That was our, you know, and Jack and the girls and Dawn, they did really, really well. And we've got plans for the coming year where, you know, like one of the issues that the girls have raised is the trauma that people suffer and the understanding of what they're going through when their children have been taken. And we've got to do something about that because, in fact, in New Zealand, we lose more people to suicide through the association of the child protection system and the family court than we do to car accidents. And that's abuse. And that's genocide, actually. And our government know this is going on. And with no further ado, I'd like to invite the lovely Mr. Marius Reikeras from Norway, who has been very successful over a 20-year period, but of late, he wasn't so successful in the first 10 years. He really didn't piss them off enough. And he has been very successful in the Human Rights Court in Europe against his country and the equivalent of Tamariki. And he's got the support of presidents from Czechoslovakia, Poland, Turkey, where their citizens have been taken by the Norwegian government and put into child protection, including the US, which of course is arbitrary detention. And this state at the moment thinks it's okay. Well, the only way we're going to put pressure on these states is we have to put a global movement together, and I think we can do it. We've started pretty okay in New Zealand. It was a bit rocky, but we've got a nice little template now. And I'd like you to invite Marius here, and he's going to talk to you about some of these cases and the abuses that are going on in the courts, which is where most of us came from, and through our child protection system, Tamariki,